I thought it would be fun with a few days left here in the regular season to revisit the over-under win totals for some of these teams back in September. This is all on DraftKings Sportsbook. And it's interesting. I don't remember a year, and I wouldn't look at DraftKings, but ESPN also has projections every year, and Kevin Pelton does a model for that. And I would always go back towards the end of the season. I'd revisit Kevin Pelton stuff, and it's always fascinating to me what gets right, what gets wrong. This year in particular, it feels like there's a lot of wrong.
A lot of wrong. That's what it seems like.
Well, they nailed the Celtics and Bucks. Those were the top two teams according to DraftKings Sportsbook for win totals. Celtics line was at 53.5. Bucks were at 52.5. We're recording this on a Saturday, April 1st. As of right now, Celtics have cleared the over. Bucks have cleared the over with 54 and 55 wins, respectively. 76ers at 50.5 have cleared with 51. Nuggets have cleared. Grizzlies have cleared. Cavs have cleared. Knicks have cleared. Kings have cleared. And then there's a bunch of teams that everybody really thought were going to be shitty that have been quite competitive.
Yep.
And that is the Magic, Jazz, Pacers, Thunders. All those teams have cleared by a mile. What's interesting, though, and this is kind of what I want to talk about, is right after the Celtics, Bucks, and before we get to the 76ers, the next four teams for total wins for this season, the lines were Clippers at 52.5, Suns at 52.5, Warriors at 51.5, and Nets at 50.5. And obviously, none of those teams are going to come particularly close to their projected win totals.
No, and the Nets situation is obvious. The Suns is interesting because they've also had a huge amount of turnover. The Clippers, the one in particular, though, I feel like is a miss because they should have anticipated them doing what they were going to do, which was you never know who the fuck is going to play every night.
I know.
And so how can you possibly say this is a team that's going to win 52.5, 53 games when you don't know how many games you're going to get from these guys?
Well, in fairness, with the Suns, given that they were an excellent regular season team the prior two seasons, coming off a Game 7 loss against the Mavs in the Western Conference semifinals, I don't hate that. And they were 18-11 when Devin Booker first got hurt. But that team clearly wasn't the same team to start the season that we saw throughout the regular season last year. And then, given the injuries and then the trade and then the subsequent injury to Durant, no surprise they won't reach their win total there. Nets would have, I would guess, reached their win total had Kevin Durant not sprained his knee back in January because they were playing excellent basketball. And who knows, Kyrie Irving and him may still be on that team had Kevin Durant not sprained his knee, which is crazy to think about. The Warriors are the team to me. I know they've had Steph injuries, but at no point, we've been waiting all season for this Warriors-esque stretch.
Yeah,
they started last season 18-2. They had that 73-9 season. They were dominant when they had Kevin Durant. Like, we've become so accustomed to a 8-9 game winning streak, them winning 15 of 17, whatever it is. They just haven't found any level of consistency this season. And a lot of that has to do with their road defense, of course.
You would have to say, looking at this list, I would say the Mavericks feel like the biggest, I don't know if the word is disappointment, but the biggest miss on expectations from where they were predicted from where they're going to finish?
I think so. I mean, we kind of went through those four teams. The Warriors to a degree, but Steph, I think, has played in 51 games as of today. So I kind of understand that. And they've got basically a 500 record when he plays. So I kind of understand that because he's been out. Never really solidified the bench to start the year, especially the bench was bad. The Mavs and the Warriors, to me, of the really great teams, feel like the biggest disappointment. I guess regular season disappointments, but Mavs now in danger of missing the play-in game.
Yep.
And I hate to just keep bringing this up and hammering this home, but you could have had Jalen Brunson for 4 for 57 if you had just given him his early extension last season.
It's not great.
Not great. Some other disappointments. The Miami Heat, the Timberwolves, Hawks, Lakers, Raptors, Pelicans, Bulls, Blazers. I don't like the Blazers preseason over-under at 39.5. I don't think they were really ever going to get that. We talked about this on the Old Man of Three Things last week on Monday. And it felt like for the Blazers to be in a 6, 7, 8 position in the conference playoff picture, so much had to go right and almost nothing could go wrong. And that's not the case for them. The teams that I mentioned, of course, that far exceeded their win total. The Knicks, one of the best stories. Jalen Brunson, a huge part of that. Sacramento Kings had a 33.5 win total line. They've obviously far exceeded that, 47 as of today. And then the Magic, who started out 5-20, have played excellent basketball for the rest of the season. Jazz were an early surprise. Pacers, particularly prior to Tyrese Halliburton getting hurt, were a great surprise. And the Thunder have been competitive all season long.
Thunder story is amazing. I mean, that's the second worst. Number in the league going into the season at 23.5, tied with the Rockets. And, they're at 38 now, and it's like, who knows? I mean, they could be at 42 by the end of the season. Yeah,
I mean, the really funny part to me in just looking at this for like, you nailed it. It's like, I'll throw Bucks Celtics in there. So that's 2 teams, 76ers right on it, Grizzlies right on it. That's, what is that? 4 teams, Nuggets 5, Cavs 6, Wizards. They're probably going to exceed. They've got some games left, and they're at 35.5, and they've got 34 wins as of today. And the Spurs, what is that? 8 teams? 8 teams that they're like, the line is pretty good out of 30. And my point to that is, and some of this has been injury, and some of this has been what I described as parity, what Legler described as mediocrity. It's just been a crazy regular season for the NBA. And that's why I'm doing this, just to kind of put in context how, number one, how good the Celtics and Bucks have been. I'll say that. But also how much parity there has been, how much unpredictability there has been, how much 1 or 2 moves, the Kings adding shooting, Mike Brown coming in as the head coach, the Knicks adding, like how much 1 or 2 things can shift a team's odds, an injury, obviously. Yeah. But how much 1 or 2 things can shift a team's fortunes. And we've seen that play out in real time this season in the NBA.
Don't you think also, we've talked about this a bunch with Memphis, but I think this is certainly the case with Boston and Milwaukee too, just their level of depth and them being able to survive games where their stars are not playing because they have these, 6th and 7th men who can fill into these roles. And it's a thing that, I don't think anyone should be surprised how good Tyus Jones has been or that Brogdon has been able to sort of seamlessly fit in Boston, but it's an advantage that they have that some of these other teams who've, taken these dips may not.
Yeah, depth matters, particularly in the regular season, but I've screamed this a bunch. I think depth matters in the playoffs. I think having a bench that can at least be a net neutral in 10 to 14 minutes a game in the playoffs is huge. And there's some commonalities, really, with a number of these teams. They've drafted well, and they've made timely trades. The Celtics in particular have drafted really well, and then they've added Derek White at the trade deadline. They got Malcolm Brogdon this summer. The Bucks, of course, drafted Giannis, and then they got Brook Lopez originally on a very cheap contract. They traded for Drew. As much as the players and the coaches matter, management matters. I scream all the time about the Grizzlies. Just their development program is great. The Thunder have drafted well. Sam Presti's notorious for that. We gave John Hammond and Jeff Weltman some credit a few weeks back. That team finally has drafted well over the past few drafts, and they're now in a position that they have a very bright future. Yeah, team management means a lot.
The rule in the new CBA about that was sort of centered around addressing load management, about the minimum number of games you have to play to be eligible for end of season awards. Do you think that that's going to make this a little easier next year because you're not going to have this quite? I mean, we were talking about the Clippers earlier, but this has been an ongoing saga for a lot of these teams about you just don't know who's going to be showing up every night, and so how are you supposed to predict if you're trying to handicap this stuff?
I would also, yes. I personally would have gone at 64 games. I think 65 is the number that's over 80%, and 64 is just under 80. I would have given, that's like a wiggle room, right? End of season, you've got the number 1 seed locked up. You don't need to play the last game. Why should you? I believe that. So I would have gone 64. I like the number. They've got the right intent here. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I think the games played, like injuries are injuries. That's one thing. I think the games played will go back up to somewhat normal next season, not just because of this, but when you think about it, we had 2020, which was a shortened season, and then there was this weird time off because of COVID, and then there was the bubble. Then we had a quick turnaround, and then we had a very condensed season that went all the way into July, and then we had a full season in 2022, 2023 now, and now it's like I feel like we're finally getting back to normal with this off season, and hopefully guys can rest and take care of their bodies and be in a normal position. And even for these young guys that came in 2020 or 2021, like this was not a normal first few years in the league, and now we're going to get back to our normal schedule, and I think that hopefully will help with some of this load management stuff. And for anybody who's like, oh, we've had 2 seasons, there's a cumulative effect to me of 2020. And it was one of the reasons I had to fucking retire. I lived it.
Everyone's body's out of whack.
It was just, you have this routine that you do for years and years and years and years and years. And then all of a sudden it gets out of whack, and your body, I think there was a backlash to that from some players' bodies. And I really believe this. I really think it had an effect over the last 2 seasons on some of these injuries. And I think next year, with this second straight long off season, we're going to be in a good position going into next year with player health. It's almost NBA playoffs time. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up with code JJ. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. See show notes for details.